The older I get, the more I realize that a lot of romance movies aren't actually very romantic if you look at it from other perspectives besides the main characters. But even sometimes it's disturbing from the main character's perspective. I recently talked about how 50 First Dates is actually a horror movie if you look at it from Lucy's perspective instead of Henry's. And then after thinking about that, I started to think more about Drew Barrymore movies and how the movie Never Been Kissed has always been creepy. And I don't understand why and how somebody was able to write this. And looking over it, I saw they've made several other romantic movies that I don't think are very good, like that awful movie Valentine's Day, which was one of those movies where they had a star-studded cast and nothing happens in the movie, and it's a bunch of isolated stories that go nowhere, and they're tied together with just fucking dental floss, where you're like, that was basically a bunch of short films. I don't even know if that constituted a movie. And I was surprised, honestly, that they were able to get so many stars in this film. They have Drew Barrymore, David Arquette, Jessica Alba, John C. Reilly, Molly Shannon, and it's one of the creepiest plots that I've ever seen put into a movie. So the plot centers around Drew Barrymore's character, Josie Geller. She works at a newspaper as a copy editor, and one day she gets an opportunity to go undercover as a reporter, and they want to send her into a high school to do a story that will help parents become more aware of what their children are experiencing at this high school. And right off the bat, this is a very creepy plot. You're going to send an adult woman in to hang around a bunch of kids and infiltrate a school, something that we're always afraid that's going to happen, that somebody like a predator or a bad actor is going to get into a school and cause some kind of harm. And we see that Josie is kind of that person because she desperately wanted to be cool when she was in school. She was actually a huge geek in high school and was picked on for it. She had a crush on the most popular guy in school who asked her out to prom just so he could egg her outside of her house. So ever since then, she's always had this need to fit in, belong, and be cool. Once she's in the school, because she always had that need for validation, especially from the cool guy that she went to high school with, she kind of develops a crush on a high schooler who's the cool guy of this high school. And just all throughout this, like, Chris Hansen alarm bells are going off. You need to catch this predator. And her getting a crush on this high school guy and trying to like reclaim the coolness of her high school years that she never got very much feels like predatory teachers who start working for a school to abuse kids so that they can get the person that they never got in high school. But that is the tip of the iceberg. This movie gets so much worse. So Drew Barrymore was 23 when she was in this movie, and she looks her age. In no way is it believable that she would blend in with a bunch of high school students. It's really giving, how do you do, fellow kids? And while she wants to be really cool and focuses in on the popular guy at the high school, she really does fall back into where she was in high school because she really hasn't changed anything about herself since high school. And then we see the scene in her English class, and this is where everything gets so creepy. So her English teacher, Sam, starts focusing in on her as soon as she gets to the class. And throughout the story, we see that her English teacher falls in love with her. He thinks that she is a teenage girl, and we see that he targets her as a new student and someone who's unpopular and isolated, and starts grooming her. And it tries to make it seem as though she's not like the other girls because she reads Shakespeare, which tons of high schoolers are into Shakespeare, because it's pretty basic. They teach it in school. But we can see that he really focuses in on her from the second that she gets into the class. And it just makes you wonder, how many times has this teacher focused in on the new girl that came to that school and started giving them a bunch of attention? And while they try to play this off as romantic, it is not romantic at all. It's very much a child predator trying to groom the unpopular girl at school. And then we see that David Arquette's character, who is her brother named Rob, was a very popular guy when they were in high school. But he peaked in high school, and now he's kind of a loser. And so he really wants to go back and reclaim his glory days of high school, so he also starts going to the high school. In the movie, he starts hooking up with this high school student who I believe is 16, and Josie tries to tell him that this is wrong, and he essentially tells her he doesn't care. Which is like every loser who peaked in high school. They want to go back. If your best days were when you were in high school, then you kind of fucked up your adult years. And he comes up with this idea of going back to high school after Josie shows him a picture of the high school girls, and he calls them high school hotties. And while I'm watching this, I'm just like, maybe if you tried acting like an adult and getting some accomplishments, you wouldn't want to be a kid again. So the newspaper she works with then starts having her wear a hidden camera as she's infiltrating this high school and these groups of teenagers. And they all start becoming obsessed with it, and they're watching and very invested in what's going to happen next. Which I think you can see this pattern in here, these adults acting very predatory towards children. there's no concern throughout the entire movie about protecting kids, which was supposed to be the whole thesis of them even doing this story in the first place, was to help parents better understand the dangers that their kids were under. Yeah, the danger is that a bunch of adults are trying to sneak into a high school and manipulate the kids and have relationships with them. And so Rob, her brother, starts being the cool guy at school again, trying to up her profile, which does in fact work. So then we see this teacher, Sam, does start grooming Josie. We can see that he's building feelings for her and being highly inappropriate. Like, there's this whole scene where they go to the fair and then they end up riding the Ferris wheel together, and he starts talking about his relationship with this woman and how it's not working out. And all of the things that he's doing are playbook grooming techniques. He's crossing boundaries with her, he's spending time outside of school with her, he's trying to tell her how mature she is and different from the other girls. He starts talking about his personal relationships so that he can start to cross these boundaries with her so that she'll build up affection for him. And during this, he tells Josie that when she's his age, there will be guys lined up around the block to date her, clearly trying to cross boundaries with her. And so just like all romance films, they always follow the exact same formula. The main character has a secret that they kept from their love interest, which then gets revealed, and then their love interest is angry at them, and they stop talking to them. And there's a big resolve where they come clean. The main character is able to explain why they did the things they did. They're able to reunite, and then they fall in love. And unfortunately, in this movie, they do the exact same thing. So Josie ends up stopping the popular kids from trying to haze her friend at the school dance, and then she reveals to everyone that she and her brother Rob are actually adults. And then in the movie, the teacher, Sam, gets mad that she's an adult, and that's why he stops talking to her in the end. And they try to present this that he's mad that she lied to him, but he was trying to start a relationship with a kid, and then he gets mad that she was actually an adult, which makes me think that his preference was kids. And then while he's mad at her, he says, "What, you thought I'd be happy because I'm allowed to be attracted to you now?" This guy knew full well what he was doing. And then he rejects her, saying that he can't see her the same way anymore. So he's mad that she's not a kid, which he's literally a child predator, and it makes you wonder how many times he's done this before. And then he says to her, "I can't believe you lied to me," which, if anything, this should have been a huge relief for him finding out that she was an adult the whole time. But this is like a deal breaker for him. And we see that he clearly has a type, and that type is under 18 years old. Like, people like this need to be sent to prison or thrown in volcanoes, not being sympathized with in the movie because they were lied to. It's like getting caught by Chris Hansen and then being mad that the decoy that they set them up with was actually an adult. It's absolutely absurd. But they try to play this whole thing off as like a happy ending that she's not a kid, completely ignoring all the implications of what he was doing and who he really is. And so at the end, she tries to set up this meet cute thing, and it's like, oh, if you really love me, then come to this baseball game, and then they're gonna reunite on the home plate. Which, first off, this is a girl who's already had massive amounts of rejection, and she wants to potentially get rejected in front of everybody at this baseball game, where they're all just sitting in the stadium staring at her. And then he comes out, and I guess he does come around to the fact that she's not a kid, and he accepts it. And then they try to play this as a romantic moment. Who the fuck wrote this? Who wrote this and why? And the people in the crowd are actually cheering for this. They're cheering that they got together, and I'm just like, what is wrong with everybody in this town? Oh, and then John C. Reilly's character hooks up with his employee because there's just clearly no boundaries for anybody. And in the movie, they just completely ignore that Rob's character was a child predator as well. There's just no wrap up. And honestly, when I watched this movie when I was young, it really made me uncomfortable. And then rewatching it as an adult, it genuinely makes me feel sick. I can't believe somebody would actually put this on paper. And they took that to a production company and they were like, yeah, let's make this. And then financiers funded it, and a director agreed to it, and all of these actors agreed to it after reading the script. This movie should have never been made. And on my TikTok, I've talked about a lot of movies that have really disturbing elements or a creepy scene, like in Shallow Hal and The Kissing Game. But this whole movie is that. This entire movie is disturbing. And I don't understand how not only they got people to sign up for this, but how it didn't ruin their careers. People look back on this movie fondly, and it's genuinely one of the creepiest movies I've ever seen. I don't understand how this gets labeled as a romantic comedy, but I do understand why the actors really don't talk about it that much. I want to thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell. If you want more content, I have a members profile on here as well as a Patreon and a TikTok. And please let me know in the comments what you thought of this video as well as this genuinely disturbing movie. Thank you all again for watching. My name's Jacob DeSayo, and I'll see you in the next video.